Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and in this video we're going to see how I take the Deathwing Terminator that I painted in last week's video and turn it into this squad that we've come up with here as a sort of nod to the original game of Space Hulk. So if you've watched last week's video, that'll give you the full recipe for how I've actually painted the miniature. This one we're going to focus more on things like the decal work and the bases and just a few of the overarching feelings from doing it. This project had no purpose other than I really fancied doing it. It was so fun looking at that old artwork and inspirational that I just wanted to do a little sort of homage paint job, stick it in the cabinet, make me smile. There's no real purpose other than that. It's not display painting. I suppose it's army painting. It's very easy if you watch last week's videos to see, you know, that it was painted in an army painting style with the purpose of being able to easily replicate it across a larger number of miniatures in a decent amount of time. But this isn't a plan for an army or anything. I'll say just to make me smile. And whilst it's inspired by the old stuff, it's not meant to be, you know, a complete copy. So I've just taken things like that sort of bolder colour palette, lots of nice metallics, and just tried to capture that vibe as I interpret it from those models. And I often find with these sort of fun projects that don't really have a purpose that they will throw up for me either new color scheme ideas or new new techniques I think I need to work on a little bit more to improve my personal sort of hobby development. So they're always really useful for myself, and it's really fun to be able to share them with you here over on the channel. So I hope you enjoy. Let's paint. Something I got plenty of questions about from last week's video was how did you do those checkers on the back of the fist? So I thought I'd go through the whole process, and I've left, although it's sped up, I've left the whole thing in here for you to see. So as I mentioned before, the backs of the fists are separate pieces. They're very, very easy to take off and do sort of more interesting things with without worrying about having to mask off the rest of the model and all that sort of thing. So I've got the decal that I wanted to use. This was from Microscale Industries, which are the people that make Microsol and Microset, which is what you'll have seen us talk about in our decal video. And I would recommend going and watching that because it will go into it in sort of full detail, not just what I'm doing here, but sort of why we're doing things, that sort of stuff. So I give myself plenty of space to work with. So I cut a much bigger square of this stuff than I think I need to. And then I prep the surface of the miniature gloss varnish, and then I prep it with some Microset. Then I lay the transfer across it. Now the Microset is going to give me loads and loads of work time with this. It kind of turns the decal, if you've ever used a sheet of gelatin to make something, then you know it goes that sort of floppy, malleable texture. This isn't dissimilar to that. And what it allows you to do is constantly sort of pull and prod it around. And the aim here is to get the decal as flush as possible to the surface. So we want as little air underneath it as possible. This is going to stop us getting any of those horrible silvering effects and little air bubbles and stuff like that. So on a smaller area, on a slightly simpler shape, I would typically be able to smoosh the decal over that surface and roll it in like you see me doing there with a Q-tip, sort of 90% of the way. Then I will let it more or less dry, and then it's very, very easy to trim off the extra bits like you're seeing me do here with a very, very sharp scalpel blade. This was a little trickier because of the shape of it, and I'm having to trim this off when it is still fairly wet and moving around a lot, but thankfully the sharp blade is allowing me to still puncture through and pull the pieces off very, very easily. Everything I'm going to show you in this video is just how I hobby. I'm sure there are better ways of going about it, and I'm sure there are people that are far more experienced, you know, in decal work. I haven't said that I've been using decals for 12 years or whatever now, on nearly every project I do. But, you know, I know a lot of people like to use things like nail scissors to cut them and all that sort of stuff. But this is just how I work, and hopefully you can take some tips from it. So what I'm doing is working from one side of the fist to the other, and I'm just trimming it and then rolling it back over the surface, smoothing it out and pushing all those little air pockets out to the edges so they come out. And I've sped this up about 2 to 3 times normal speed to give you an idea. So that, you know, the whole process probably took me a good, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that to do. Now, when we get to the area where the purity seal is, I'm pushing it up into it, and then I'm making loads and loads of teeny tiny cuts just along the edge of that purity seal. Now, very often you're going to tear the decal, something will go wrong. like I have there behind the purity seal, so the top corner, as it were. It's nothing to worry about. We'll just use one of those pieces we've trimmed off and apply that over there. Won't be a problem at all. I must admit, because I tend to battle damage my miniatures, if I make mistakes with things like decals, I don't let it stress me out. So once it was all done and dried, I then put the microsol on, followed that full process like I did in the video above. And then I'm going in here with a blade and I'm just scratching it up to create a little bit of damage. It's a nice way of scratching through a darker decal to reveal a brighter colour underneath, whereas sometimes it might be harder to paint that lighter colour over the top of the black decal. So hopefully that was helpful to see the process there. I have a huge folder full of decals that I've collected over the years, and generally I will use decals very often rather than freehand, because quite simply I'm much better at using decals than I am at doing freehand. Is it a skill I want to improve at? Possibly, but I love how decals look, so I'm not too fussed about that. There's other things I'd like to get better at. Now, one of the things I wanted to take advantage of with the backs of the fists and things like that was to get the bright colours in. So colours that I typically wouldn't work with, perhaps a palette that we don't see at the moment in sort of 40k. The stylistically, it's sort of gone a different way, but I've always really loved the 40k, this concept of, knights in space. It's sort of a medieval space opera type thing. And I love that look. So I've done a nice bright yellow here, just using contrast paints. I've given it a tiny little dusting of gloss varnish just to protect it from any stickiness that might be on this masking tape that I'm using here. I didn't have thin enough tape, so as you can see, I've just cut it to the width that I want it. The gloss will stop paint adhering as well over the top of it, it's worth saying, but contrast paint's very, very delicate, and when you airbrush it, it's even more delicate. So I would rather do it in this process. That was my thinking anyway, was to I'd rather protect this yellow, and then the red that I'm going to spray over the top of it should be okay, because I'll then varnish over the top of that as well. Now, I've used Evil Sunz Scarlet. It's the red I've used across the rest of the model whenever I've used the red. Again, GW Warhammer 80s, 90s red. We've got to get plenty of it in there. And you notice there with the tape, I was using one piece to make sure that I got the width consistent all the way across. And then I've literally just finished spraying, clean the airbrush out. So it's taken about 30 seconds. And now I'm going to peel this tape off. Very, very satisfying, and really reminds me of sweets like rhubarb and custard or something like that. I think is awesome. I've loved this project. It's like, seriously, like doing all these things I wouldn't normally do has been a ton of fun. Once that was ready, nice gloss coat just to protect all that paintwork underneath. I thought the fist was just going to stay like this because it's like that bit of artwork that we saw earlier on. And one thing you can do here is just, again, use a scalpel very, very gently. I'm just scraping through the red layer, revealing the yellow underneath to create some scratches. This is a very sharp blade, and I'm touching it ever so gently. So if you're not confident at doing this, I would suggest you just paint the scratches on. But it's a lovely way of creating, I think, very realistic looking scratches quite quickly as well. But by the time I'd finished doing it, I felt the fist needed a little something more. It wasn't quite right. So I've just popped a few decals over the top. So again, I just followed the full process, gloss, decals, microset, microsol, all the rest of it. And just played around with a few different positions for the decals. But obviously that meant that I then needed to chip over the top of the decals because I had chipped the fist underneath. So in hindsight, I would have applied the decal before I went in and did that scratching with the knife. It's also been really fun using Aquillas because I either shave them off normally or paint an awful lot of Heresy where we don't use them so often. So yeah, it's good fun putting those in there. Now, one thing I wanted to do to our original model was to bring it in line with the others. I've taken the eye lenses a step further. As you'll see, I've just kept going with the orange, but the big difference was I went back in and did much more of the edge highlighting, or the sort of tippy-tappy chips along the edge that act like an edge highlight. This isn't typically how I have traditionally painted, but it's something I'm enjoying doing more and more for my gaming miniatures. I think it helps make them really easy to read. Now, for the bases, this was good fun. I am not very good at basing, so I want to get better, and hopefully this year I can take you on that journey. I was going to make some base toppers, and someone suggested I use one of these compass cutter things. I couldn't stand it. I was useless with it. So I just drew a circle and cut that out instead. I'm sure the compass cut thing's good. I'm sure I'm the problem, not it. But yeah, I just wanted to get it done. So glued it down onto the base and then sanded round the edges. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to those of you that support us over on Patreon. I say it every week, but myself and Andy massively appreciate that support. You have allowed us to grow Cult of Paint into what it is and what it's becoming. You know, you've got a video over on here each week, got a video over there each week. Andy's just kicking off his Golden Demon series leading up to Golden Demon US in Adepticon, so that'll be awesome to follow. But we really do appreciate that support. If for any reason you can't support us over on Patreon, but you do enjoy the content that we produce here on YouTube, then likes and shares and subscribes and all that, they do make a massive difference to smaller channels like ours. So yeah, thanks to all of you. We really do appreciate it. One of the toppers I didn't glue all the way on. I just sort of glued half the base so that I could slice it off, and the intention was to glue a bit of checker plate plasticard on there. I had thought about doing these straight on the base tops, but I thought I'd try it with a plasticard first, see how it goes. Sort of, you know, start simple, learn the basics, and we will hopefully, as I say, this year will progress, and I can bring you along with me on that journey. And then sort of decoration really. So I'm making a bunch of rivets up here. I'm using something called stamping foil, and I'm just pushing through a little drill bit here onto a silicone pad, and that just produces lots of teeny tiny rivets that I'm able to use and glue on and use as a bit of additional detail. Now, something I picked up for this project specifically was a scribing tool. So the plasticard is glued down, it's all set and all the rest of it, and then I'm using a metal ruler here, and I'm just going to very, very gently run this scribing tool. I think I'm using a 0.2 here. I think it's a 0.2. And we got a set with a bunch of them in, and I run it down a few times, just very, very gently. Let sort of the weight of the blade begin to cut through the card, and then once there's a little channel, I take the ruler away, and then I can just press a bit more firmly and run the scribing tool down there, sort of free-handing it, as it were. Really cool. I'm looking forward to playing around with this a lot more. It creates a few little burrs on the edges, so I just used some sanding sponge there to just tidy them off, and then a bit of toothbrush to remove any of the dust that's in the centre. I was really umming and ahhing about what to do the bases for these, but I'm really happy with how they've come out, and I think if I was to do them again, I think I would do them significantly better now, having had a first go. This is literally the first go I've ever had with doing this. The tools and stuff didn't arrive until like not many hours before this video had to go out. So yeah, it was a late night to get things done. But really, really good fun, and I'm looking forward. I hope you guys are all right with me doing a little bit more building and converting and hobbying on the channel this year rather than just straight up tutorials. I would like to share that more with you, and hopefully, as I say, my mistakes and successes hopefully can be useful to you over some of these projects. And then we were teaching in Cheltenham at the weekend at Incom Gaming, and Cheltenham has a very, very old like model railway type shop, which is just full of cool like bits of plastic card and stuff to use. So I went in there and spent far too much money on bits of tat, really, but space decoration, right? So it should be fun. So all I've done there is use some L-beam. Is it called? All right, let's call it L-beam. And then added some rivets for detailing and all the rest of it. Now that base topper that I hadn't glued all the way, I was like, right, so slice this down a few times, snap it off, and then the intention was to glue the other half off using checker plate plasticard, which I got loads of, and I love using that when I do it, and I was going to run a strip over the top. But as I pulled it off, you will see I clearly had done an awful job of super gluing it accurately, and I got this weird tear. But very, very quickly, I was like, oh, maybe this could be cool. Maybe we could make this into a smashed up bit of deck, and we'll work with this this error, one of those happy accident moments. So I just scribed out the line that I'd used to cut to turn it into a panel line instead, to make it look deliberate. And sorry, this is why the camera's all wobbling. It might be a bit funny on this bit because I didn't really intend to film this. I just ran on once I'd ripped it and got it wrong. I just thought, you know, sorry, let's just get on with it. And then I'm taking the piece that was there already and just cutting it up and gluing it on in pieces. To break it up, I would score it with the knife first and then snap it. So I would create a similar edge, and then I would just scuff it up a little with the knife and just add it, build it up and add it in. I don't really know what I'm trying to represent here, but it's a smashed up floor piece of some sort. And then again, it was just delving into the bits box for all these little odds and sods I've picked up over the years at various gaming shows and model shops, just gluing cool bits on. But always in the back of my mind, I was trying to think to myself, okay, think of that old style artwork, think of that old vibe that you got from it. It was a bit more cartoony, and I loved that about it. So make things big, make things bold. I worry that I'm far too boring with my hobby a lot of the time, my color choices and my contrast and things like that. But so it's like always trying to push myself with that type of thing. I'm just using a little bit of 400 grit paper there to scuff the surface, just so everything will hopefully key to it a little bit better, particularly the painting a bit. And then just for a little bit more texture, I've just built up sort of some areas, little areas of rubble using this dry ground texture paint. Filled in those gaps there. And then once that was dried, I used sprinkled in a bit of ballast because I spent an obscene amount of money on little bags of rocks at this hobby shop. But I wanted to get ballast because I thought that would look more like industrial wreckage. An awful lot of my basing material looks is far more suited to fantasy, I think. So I wanted some more sort of sharp edge rubble to create. And then, as I say, really watered down the texture paint and just washed it all over the surface just to give it a little bit of something. Once it was primed, and I primed it with black, left it overnight, I airbrushed Tamiya white to give me a little bit of sort of spotlight effect in the center of them. And then I've chosen to go with Hull Red for this. So I wanted Hull Red's one of my favorite colors anyway, but I wanted quite a boring desaturated red to go underneath the Terminators just to provide that bit of extra contrast, but also not to draw the eye too much. And then I reinforced the spotlight using Bugman's Glow, so sort of pinky highlight to it. Then a nice heavy gloss coat over it all, and apply a few decals. Now I've left this bit in. Can you see the sort of tide marks that are on there? That's because I was rushing this. I didn't wait for the varnish to cure properly before I started putting the microset over there, which is one of the solvents that we use to do the decals. And you can see it's created that sort of tide mark that we have on there. So always let that varnish cure and dry properly before you start doing things over it. And then all I was doing there was just re-chipping the decals with a bit of the Hull Red. And then the finishing touch for the bases was just Starship Filth. I was going to use black, but then I thought, well, no, Starship Filth, clues in the name. Let's use that instead. And make up an oil wash using just normal mineral spirits here. And then I'm going to wash that over the bases. Initially, I work on the panel lines and the crevices. And then once I've made sure I got a good coat in all of that, I did a nice light filter coat of it all over the bases anyway. But I'm really looking forward to pushing the basing this year. It could be fun. And here they are, my homage to that amazing second edition era, sort of 90s era artwork for Space Hulk. I love them. I absolutely love them. It's not like anything I've really ever painted before. Color choice was obviously, paint it in a similar, mechanical way. But it's I've not really chosen to paint a model in this style before, and I've loved every second of it. I love how they look. I know I said that I want this to just be a shelf project that makes me smile when I walk past it and remember playing games of Space Hulk as a kid and all the rest of it. But if for any reason you think, oh, Henry, that would be really cool to see a Terminator Librarian that you add into these guys, or maybe some of those Deathwing Knights you could do up in this style. And if we accidentally end up with a small all Terminator force, it wouldn't be the end of the world, right? It wouldn't be a disaster. But that's on you guys if you wanna see it. I think I've covered basically everything I've done in it. The head on the Sergeant model that comes on the Dark Angels upgrade sprue that you get in this set. Obviously, Games Workshop did send us this Deathwing Assault set, which is the models I've worked from it. I hope you can all get hold of it, those of you that want to. I've painted that skin in exactly the same way as we do in our bunch of our different how to paint skin videos, 3 different colours, nice and simple. So I'll link up in the top how I've gone about that. For his power sword, originally I painted it a red, like a traditional power sword style, but it was too overpowering for the miniature. And actually when I looked at a lot of the old artwork, many of the swords, and actually a lot of the swords painted on the miniatures at the time, were just a silver. And I quite liked that. So I just did a simple silver sword for him. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed them. I hope you enjoy looking at them. I kind of wish I could show you them more. It feels a shame to sort of enjoy something so much and then only really just show you a minute or two, video of it or whatever. But of course, the flip side is nobody finds this remotely interesting, and I've just been massively self-indulgent for a week, so I guess we'll find out. And I can heartily recommend doing whatever this type of project is for you, just something that isn't what you normally do, but something that you've always really wanted. For me, this is when I often see the most progress, is when I push myself to do something a bit different and see what comes out of it. Now, as usual, if you've got any questions about the video, pop them down in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks ever so much for all your support. Take care. I'll see you next time. If you've liked any of the models in this video and you fancy having an army of them yourself, but perhaps you don't have the time or wherewithal to get it done, consider dropping us an email at commissions@cultofpaint.com and maybe Ben can sort you out.